everyone for joining us for this live panel. I'm joined today with a very exciting group of people. Going around the table, we have Thomas Steiner, who is a nice wave, developer relations on Project Fugu for Google. We have Ilke Aden, CEO and founder of Famobi Games. Hello. Sylvain Lebon, CEO and founder of Starting Blocks. And Gail Duval, CEO and founder of the E Foundation, and Murina, and many other things. Okay, so I'd like to just let everyone know that it is a live panel. So if you have questions, please do post them. We will try to reply to as many of them as possible. But of course, we have a few questions just to kickstart the discussion. Now, obviously, I've been thinking about this kind of live panel and some of the subjects that we're going to be looking at, and the whole question about, what is mobile going to look like in the future? And I think one of the things that comes to mind is this notion that, big tech and platforms are looking to constantly evolve and revolutionize the way we use our devices. And we see a certain kind of coming together of what would be traditionally called mobile applications or web or desktop. And I'd like to pose a question to Thomas and really kind of see what he thinks is driving this trend. Does he think it is a kind of a realization that maybe mobile app technologies that are currently being used are becoming tired in some ways, or is there a movement towards blurring the boundaries between our devices? And how might this impact developers going forward? I mean, traditionally we have different platforms. Now we have this blurring of platforms. What's happening? So Thomas, a couple of very big questions for you.
Yeah, I could talk for hours about this. I try to be brief. So I work at a big company that works with, in turn, a lot of big other companies. And something that we see is a lot of these big companies have a desire to reduce their development cost, which is why we see a lot of people interested in technologies like Flutter, for example. So they want to build once with Flutter and then roll it out to all the platforms, mobile, desktop, what have you. And we also see, just in general, still on web, there's a lot of new technologies that people need, so new APIs that people need, which is why on my team, which is the Project Fugu team, we try to enable developers to do all the things they want to do on the web platform with the missing features that we are adding to the browser. So one of the recent big launches was Adobe Photoshop, who I personally was considering as one of the apps that would never be on the web. And here we are in 2022 with a version of Photoshop. It's not the full version of what you get when you install the native application, but definitely it's a very well working version of Photoshop on the web. And it was enabled by just new features that we added to the platform, like, for example, performant access to files, something that wasn't possible before. You could, of course, upload and download files to a server. You could work somewhat with files on a client. But what was missing really was this kind of super high performant access to something that Adobe internally uses, which is sort of a swap file where they can manage gigabytes of Photoshop data in memory that could then be swapped to disk. And of course, things running in the browser, RAM always is a concern. So at some point you need to swap out to disk. And Adobe was missing one of the foundational primitives there, and the Chrome team built it. Safari adopted it, and now also Firefox adopted. So by just looking what partners need, we try to make more things possible on the web platform.
So what do you feel is maybe driving this push towards having that blurred boundary between kind of the web and what would be traditionally desktop and also mobile applications? And this is a question that, of course, anyone on the panel can answer. Open question. Okay. Yeah, I'll follow up with that question if no one has any other comments. So if we
The
are
boring answer is simply money. If you don't
yeah.
have to build for iOS and for Android and for Windows and for Mac, and just build once, you save a lot of money. So that's kind of the boring question. Sorry, the boring answer. But maybe someone else has different experiences, more exciting answers.
They're very quiet on that one. I'm
I
wondering.
mean, I think we
Yeah.
were not prepared for that. If you like ask the same question again, I'm pretty sure we can come up with some more exciting answers than Thomas' answer.
Be nice, Ilka. I think there's a question there about these trends towards having a more fluid experience between what we would do traditionally on a desktop or what we now do in a browser, what we do in a mobile application, and trying to remove the boundaries between those. But for me, that gives rise to a kind of a slightly different question, which is, I think, something of importance when we look at open source. We're in an open source conference here, and it's around the notion of digital sovereignty, having the freedom of choice, not just in the platforms we use, but also obviously the devices we're using. And I know that Gail has also been looking at this question of digital sovereignty, freedoms of choice, and data privacy. And I'd like to have his take on how he feels that question, is important today. Why is it important today? And how is the E Foundation really looking at that question?
All right. Thank you for the question, Christian. I think it's many questions actually into your question. So I'm not sure where to start. Today there are many questions about how data from users is collected and used, and for what purpose, and that leads immediately to the questions of the economy that is behind all this, and the business models. On our own, we think that users, the permanent data harvesting, users data harvesting that is happening on the web and in the smartphones is not acceptable anymore for many reasons. We think that at some point it can even threaten, democracy and freedom, and that's why we have this slogan now: choose freedom. And we do some products that protect actually the users' personal data, that give them some guarantees that their data is going to stay their data and stay private and secure. So that is our mission, and that is what leads our development roadmap. I think that also in terms of you are talking about digital sovereignty, and I'm not sure that sovereignty is always the good word, because it has some connotation sometimes, but I prefer to speak about strategic independency, for instance. And what is strategic independency? It's the control you can have on software. For instance, if we are talking about software, it's how deep you can go into the software to understand in the details what it's doing, and to which point you can control the software and modify it for your own need or your own purpose. And the third point is about this independence is to be able to have a total, to avoid any need to have a third party to control your software, so you can do it yourself. So that is the three pillars, in my opinion, of the technological independency. And if you think really about it, I think that open source is a key to make this possible, because it's a way to share software and knowledge, and to not depend on someone or something to make this software work and make progress and become better. So
yeah, thank you, Gail. But from an app developer's perspective, so Ilka, you know, does this kind of, what Gail is saying, does that ring a bell with you? Does that kind of chime with your experiences? The notion of a strategic independence around software?
I mean, software for me is just a tool. I mean, of course, software is key. You know, all of us, we like deal with software. The main discussion today is about the software. Nevertheless, I'm focused on end product. So I'm seeing the user. Like, so what we try to do as a company is always to adapt to the user behavior. So Thomas' feedback was like more from developers' perspective, the costs. So you said it's a boring answer, but it's one of the main answers, right? So it's all about, we are the developers, we need to like take costs into consideration. But on the other hand, if you look at the user's perspective, so this is where we need to go to. So they're impatient, they're like on road, so they're here, they have the smartphones, they need easy and fast access, and we need to come up with technical solutions. And like the OW2, like everything which is about open source, anything which supports this to satisfy the needs of the user, the end consumer, this is like perfect. So, I mean, we're trying to use like any of these tools and opportunities to satisfy user needs.
Okay, and you're actually in a really interesting position, because you have created a gaming company that's really focused on kind of the web technologies, but you're also using quick apps. And I wonder if you could kind of give some thoughts and some insights to the people listening about, you know, why you chose this route, and you know, what do you think it will lead to in the future?
I mean, here in Germany is right now heavily raining. I don't know if you hear the background noise. Do you hear me well?
No.
You don't hear me well?
No. We don't hear the background noise.
Okay, cool. So basically, we are a game development studio. But what makes us different from other like standard studios, we provide like lightweight content, like snacky content. So like small file sizes, and the average time spent is much lower than you sit in front of a console and a TV and you spend a couple of hours. So our average time spent is like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour. This is it. And mobile usage is like perfectly suitable for that. And the technology we're using is also web and lightweight technologies, including like quick apps. So all this together fits perfectly well.
Fantastic. And your experience of quick apps from a developer and publisher perspective?
I mean, first of all, of course, we need a kind of short like adaptation phase. I mean, we are already using web technologies and JavaScript. Of course, like quick apps have their own technical requirements, but it's like the onboarding is quite fast and quick, and the outcome and the advantages to reach more people in a faster way, it's worth it.
Fantastic, thank you. So if we also think about that question, and coming back to the question of kind of the various platforms and spreading across devices, and the notion of controlling data and how data is consolidated within platforms. I think, you know, here there's a natural question for Sylvain, because I know he's at the forefront of looking at this question. And I would like him to give us some insights into how he approaches the question of data ownership, and what his company Starting Blocks are doing there.
Sure. So Starting Blocks is developing a technology that enables web developers to build apps that are based on on a decentralized architecture. That means that the data can be stored somewhere and accessed from anywhere. So basically, the consequence of that is that we can have some data, some applications that connect to data in other places, and all applications can connect to data anywhere they are. So we basically separate the application on one side from the data storage on the other side, compared to what the platform is today, and that leads us to an architecture closer to what we know in the mobile world, for example, where the app is on your phone and accessing data on another server. And with the standards we use, that means that basically the app can connect to different servers, and the users of different apps can interact through different apps.
Mm. Yeah, so from a data perspective, we're looking at kind of the that diffusion, that decentralization of data, and maybe how it's owned by the users and controlled, which also, of course, ties in well to that initial kind of sentence I made around this kind of blurring of boundaries between the platforms. And I think, Ilko is also saying, users, they're much more on the go today. They want to get stuff done. They want it quickly done. They're going to use the device that's in their hand or readily available. And that device could be a mobile phone, but, it could also be a desktop or a tablet or, whatever it is that they're using. So I think, that's extremely interesting. So, if we take this back to kind of an opportunity perspective, I just a general question, and for the audience, this is not at all a prepared question. Where do you see this all going over the next few years?
That's a tough question. I'd say that the web, as it has been built in the last few years, has been centralized again around a few platforms that we use, and basically it tends to go to bigger and bigger platforms, which means fewer and fewer alternatives for consumers. I think the trend now is, and that's what people call Web3, is a decentralization trend, where people get more choice in what apps they use, and can use an app without, like today, if you use an app, you have to give in all your data to that app, and to stay inside this app and only communicate with users of that app. I think that the trend is towards more apps that are able to communicate with each other, which means that users can have apps that are more adapted to their needs, and with the controlling where the data is stored and how it is used.
And Inikwa, how do you see the kind of this trend evolving? I think Sylvain mentioned actually there a really important phrase. He talked about this sort of consolidation of data within kind of the big players. I suspect if we don't talk about consolidation of data, but we talk about maybe consolidation of market access and things like that, there must be also areas that you would like to see evolve, along with this kind of fusioning of boundaries and increasing access that people would like, on the go access that people would like. So how do you see that? How do you see this kind of evolution, and the big players versus the small players, for example?
Is that question for me, Christian?
It is for you, yeah. Sorry, it's a bit of a rambling question.
No, I love this kind of open questions. So I love to discuss about technologies. So this is what I breathe, technology. It's all about that. I mean, products. We have, like, for the last couple of years, always the same products, same games. We have produced solitaire games 20 years ago. Today, we're still producing solitaire games. The only thing what changes is technology and the way you access it. I mean, I'm not aware of the Chinese market, for example. There I know that everything is done through WeChat. This is what I heard. I've never been there. It's like one entrance point. So there's one big gatekeeper with all that payment tools, e-commerce, and whatever you do. Here in Europe, we have, or let's say in the US, it's like partly like this. Like you have, I don't know, like if you have your Facebook login, you know, you can use it to like access different services. There are different type of, I don't know, whatever logins you have, like Google login and so on. Like still, like these are the gatekeepers. But in general, I think what should be like more decentralized is like the fast, quick access to like the product of that, like, yeah, the provider. Let's say there is a e-commerce platform. You're just like on the go, you see an ad, you just quickly scan the QR code, you are directly on the website, and the payment, everything should be as easy as possible, because these kind of opportunities, they drive the conversion rate.
Right.
So that means let's say I see, I don't know, a t-shirt somewhere. It's like, wow, I don't know, in France, in Paris. Like I see there's a shop, whatever, I can directly scan, buy it, and pay it. So this is for me kind of opportunity. I don't need to like invest time, and I have it immediately. But if I need to install something, if I need to register, I would say, damn, it's not worth it for a 20 years of t-shirt to invest like 5 to 10 minutes of my lifetime. So it's not in balance. So everything what we do right now here is like, you know, driving higher conversion rate with this type of lightweight and quick access, like quick
Yeah.
apps.
And do you think also, and you know, the others on the call can please, you know, answer as well. But do you think there's a question around, you know, how we open up the market access for more players and that we increase the distribution channels? I mean, you've talked about like, you know, QR codes. I just want to snap a QR code and get bounced over to a quick app or to a web page or whatever it is. You know, that's also in some respects, I mean, if we talked about kind of the traditional app models, we might be thinking of, well, I'm being bounced over to a traditional app, but that's within a store. You know, have I gone through the store process and all of this kind of stuff? So, you know, is there, as well as the fusioning of device and the immediacy of access, is there a need to open out, from your perspectives, how we use these different channels and the routes to distributing applications? You're probably going to say yes. I've lost all sound from you, Ilka.
Yeah, it's again me. Okay, I mean, of course I can.
But as an app publisher, I'm interested in your voice. But of course, you know, Gail, I'm sure you have an opinion on this as well, and maybe even Thomas. So, you know, please, everyone, feel free to answer.
Yes, but we have different, you know, business here, and the benefit I see, for instance, with mini apps or quick apps is different, probably, than the benefit from Ilke or the others on this panel. For us, the benefit of this new technology, mini apps or quick apps, for us is mostly a promise, you know, to have something that will give more choice to developers and apps publishers, and to escape the big platforms. But in terms of you know, conversion, etc., I'm not in this business, so I don't have a lot of comment. But maybe I could show you quickly something. If I can share my screen just to talk about, you know, the personal data.
Yeah.
You know, you see something now?
We do.
Yeah, so you see the advanced privacy. This is a new software we have in iOS v1, and it shows actually the number of trackers that are active within the operating system over time. So if you go into the details, you see that actually applications that you use that are on the OS are using a huge number of trackers, And just look at some figures, and you see, for instance, on June 7, that was yesterday, you have 14 more, close to 15,000 trackers access that have been blocked on my device. So this is really something that users are not aware about, and we want to explain about this, and we want to give more options and more control to users and application publishers, and we think that many apps and quick apps we are helping us to do this, to achieve this.
Thank you, Gail, for that. Now, there is actually a question in the chat, so I'm going to read the question out, and whoever would like to answer, please do. This comes from Antoine Motier. Do you think that we will see in future some standards at low level, for example, the operating system, or will we have more and more encapsulation in order to isolate software away from the low-level services? So that's kind of a complex question.
I mean, let's. I mean, we're like the dinosaurs of the industry, right? Oh, okay, Thomas. I mean, you can also get. I will keep it very short. If I look back like 20 years, let's say, if I look at all the browsers, the evolution of browsers, the Internet Explorer, the Firefox, the Chrome, and so on. I mean, even when I was developing websites by my own, I always needed to check different browsers. It's the same code, but it's differently interpreted by different browsers.
For sure.
And it's still the same. Like yesterday, I went like to a self-order restaurant, like where they have their own booking system, like online. You open it it was opened in a kind of native browser on my device. It was completely destroyed. Then I needed to copy paste the link into Google Chrome, and it worked again. So that means still. So I have the feeling that we will, like also in the next 20 years, not have a like of unique standard. So there will always be kind of like overlapping of standards. But I mean, when developing products and developing software, you always need to have tons of different test devices to see if your product really works on these ones.
And I think, I'm going to jump in on this rather than be the moderator. I take my moderator hat off. I think there's one of the areas of Quick Apps that's interesting is that it's an implementation of the W3C mini app standards, which are pushing towards kind of a normalization of the developer level API set in order to extract away from that problem. And I think that's, Thomas, you've probably seen exactly this kind of problem as well from a developer perspective, right?
Yes, I was about to say the sandbox that the web browser provides you with is kind of this isolation that I think the question was about. It can make the topic or open the topic of interoperability and compatibility. There's actually a huge effort in place under the hashtag of Interop 2022, where all the big browser vendors got together, agreed on a set of most painful developer pains. We are working on fixing those. And if you go to the dashboard, you can actually see that with every release of each browser vendor, there's progress being made. So definitely it's top of mind. It's a massive developer pain, but there's a lot of progress. So I think you cannot really fairly compare, let's say, the web of the, let's say, 2010s with today's web. There has been a lot of progress. What people have not been fully aware of is that there has been progress. So a lot of people still don't assume that something like grid or flex works. There's still massive knowledge gaps where people are just stuck in their mindsets from the 2010s or whatever. So I think this is something we need to overcome. But yeah, there are compatibility issues, but they're being worked on.
Thank you, Thomas. Okay. Any more questions in the audience? I'll just throw it out to the audience there. No? Okay, so while the audience is deliberating on how to challenge you guys with something difficult, I'm going to give you all an easy question. I'm going to put my Quick App hat on and say, will Quick Apps move the needle? Are they an opportunity for you, and will they move the needle? Open question.
Definitely from technology perspective, yes, this is what is needed. So the quick, like it says quick apps, it's like quick access. This is what nowadays people need. It's only about the first like big mover. So some like big nice use case which is needed on the market. And
Okay.
this would move the needle for sure.
Excellent. Thank you, Ilka. Sylvain or Gail, any thoughts on that one? No?
I'd say that sure. I mean, I think the whole thing about, well, I mean, mobile web exists on mobile already. So the whole point of quick apps is to improve the user experience on mobile from a web perspective, and to add features to the user. So I think it has the possibility, the opportunity to happen new features to what can be done on mobile web. So I would say yes in that way.
Thank you. To inverse the question, what would be for you the biggest challenges in order to see technology like quick apps make a difference in people's lives, so that when people are using quick apps, they have this fluid experience? But what's the challenge?
I guess that if you take the publisher perspective, there is a question about how your application is going to be distributed. So, I mean, the question here is Apple and Google, are Apple and Google integrating this technology and to offer publishers the opportunity to grow through their platform? Because if you don't have this, it's going to be a tough choice for developers to bet on quick apps, because they know that they have to rely mostly on the Huawei App Store, or they have to bundle this in a runtime to be able to run on Android, or otherwise they can just use this in a web browser. So it's very limiting in terms of impact. So I think that's the main question today. Are Apple and Google going to embrace this technology?
Good answer. I can't answer on their behalf. Thomas?
I think one of the big challenges with any of these kind of technologies is they're introducing gatekeepers. If you want to build an app that is something that is not in line with the gatekeeper's vision, they will stop publishing your app, or even kick you out of whatever marketplace, app store, which is not great. Whereas if you can just take a web server, buy a domain, and be somewhere on the web accessible for everyone, that's a different story. There's no gatekeepers involved. Will quick apps move the needle? So I think I'm a web person, so I did look at many apps in general, and I think there's a ton the web can learn from them. So I think in that sense, yes, they can move the needle. I do hope that we as the web community take many apps for inspiration, take some of the great ideas that the many apps community have created around, for example, how apps are built, what kind of components people have. But then also in some terms, there are certain ways how people need to build mini apps. You couldn't imagine something like the GeoCities ecosystem on mini apps, right? So because many apps on the stores, you have sort of some expectations how many apps should look like. There's UI guidelines that you need to respect in order to even become on the market, become accepted on the market. So I think it loses also some creativity, because there's this enforcement how certain guidelines need to be applied or not. And on the web, there is no such thing.
Yeah, no, interesting comment. Actually, I'm just gonna give a question back to you, Thomas. When you're talking, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, what you're saying is making sense. But it's very interesting because, you're very much supporting this notion of the mobile web experience or the web experience as a way of having this kind of access to applications. So I guess implicitly you're also aligning with the kind of my statement at the beginning that there is a certain fatigue or end of the road syndrome coming up for traditional applications, right?
Sorry, just needed to open the door.
Uh,
Yeah. So
Live panels and remote access.
working from home, the joys of working from home. Yes. So there, well, it's a very open-ended question, and it's one where strong views are held by different parties. I want to try to be diplomatic. So I think we can learn a lot from these initiatives, but it's also sort of a threat because we already have an open system. So everyone can build websites. Everyone can build components for websites. You can invent the next jQuery if you want to, and you can just throw it out there, and everyone can use it. If people say, look, there's this new initiative, there's this new open source initiative, great, but we already have one. So I think it's great to take inspiration from different angles and different ends. But at the same time, yeah, I don't think necessarily it's the only answer.
Very nice answer. Okay, so we're coming up to the close of this discussion. We were allotted 40 minutes, I believe, initially. So that gives us a couple of minutes left. Does anyone on the or in the audience, does anyone have a question? I've seen a comment, but no questions. So last question from the audience. No, well, they have a 20-second delay, right? I'm not sure if that's 20 seconds. Okay, so we're going to leave that there. So I would like to very much thank the panelists for today. Interesting discussion, a lot of points that have been covered. We haven't had time to really dig into all of the points, of course. There's a whole panel of different subjects that have been touched upon. I hope this has given all of you watching an interest in what's happening in web technologies and, of course, in Quick Apps. For those interested, there is the OW2 Quick App initiative. I'm sure you'll find the link fairly easily on the OW2 website. And again, thank you to all our panelists. And for everyone watching, have a great end of conference and a nice evening. So long.